What is going on, everyone? A huge thank you for clicking on today's video. I greatly appreciate that, as always. Today I am finally back with another physical ROM hack video, and this time I was able to get my hands on none other than Pokemon Fool's Gold for the Game Boy Color. Now, don't be fooled by Fool's Gold here, because this is not a ROM hack of Pokemon Gold. This is instead a ROM hack of the better Gen 2 game, Pokemon Crystal, so still a ROM hack of Gen 2 nonetheless, but figured that was worth mentioning. I initially thought this was Gold, but no, this is instead Crystal. And this ROM hack comes to us from Celadonk, so huge shout out to Celadonk, and I just gotta say, I love the name, Celadonk. I think it's very funny, so huge shout out to him and anybody else who was involved in creating the ROM hack of this, because literally we would not be here if it weren't for you. So huge shout out to all of the developers of this game. I assume you made a fantastic game. And of course I feel it's worth mentioning that the developers had nothing to do with this physical cartridge. This is just a fan-made, custom physical cartridge. I love to collect those, so no affiliation between the two, just this is a purely fan-made project, so figured that was probably worth mentioning. Now, like I said, this is a ROM hack of Crystal, and this essentially features a lot of new changes to all of the Pokemon. I believe all of them have been redesigned and got new types, new looks, all of the good stuff, as well as some new locations and new content to the game. But before we jump into that, let's take a closer look at this physical cartridge. Now, this case here just honestly looks really good. You can already tell this is Apom, sporting some sort of new change to him. He looks very different, and I love I guess this is kind of like that Gen 1, I don't know if Gen 2 actually did it, but like the kind of watercolor look. Some of the best Pokemon art, and they're replicating it very well here. It looks fantastic. I love the way this Apom looks here. I love the design of this case. It just looks great. As you can see down here, we've got a new twist on the Gold and Silver series, and obviously Crystal as well. But yeah, so I mean, the front of this is looking fantastic, and I gotta say, Apom's one of my favorite Pokemon, so I'm definitely gonna try to get this Pokemon. We'll see if that actually happens. And I'm always curious why, or what their logic is behind picking these mascot Pokemon for the covers of these games. I don't know if there's any significance to Apom in this game. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I love it because I love Apom, so I'm loving that. Go ahead and move on to the side here. The spine looking good. Fool's Gold, more Apom down there. Love that. Game Boy Color. And of course, we got the back here, giving us a little bit of information on the game here. Feel free to do a full read of that if you guys want to, but basically it talks a little bit about the game, explored the new Johto, Ice-type Pikachu, Flying-type Wooper, unique areas to Johto, stones to evolve, 170 new moves, the Sevi Islands are in the game. Tons of stuff is in this game. We will, of course, dive a little bit further into that in a moment. We've got a few screen caps from the game here. You got Sevi Islands. It almost looks like that new Zapdos. I can't remember what the form name is called, but yeah, that certainly looks interesting. Let's go ahead and crack this sucker open, shall we? Here we are, Fool's Gold, looking nice. We'll set that back there, make that look good. Yeah, we got a matching cover here for the game here. And of course, we're using I would say this is probably the reproduction Gold cartridge that you see on those. And, what better pick? This is Fool's Gold after all. But looking very good here. Like I said, it's literally just a match. No complaints here. Obviously, we got the screw up there. Looking pretty good. I have had a few requests in the past to open up these cartridges so we can take a look at what's inside. I've not typically done that. It always makes me a little nervous, even though it's probably nothing to worry about. So I figured I'd go ahead and start doing that here with this video. So I've already taken the screw out here and just got to pop that down. Take the cover off there. And yeah, there we go. We've got the blob. We've got a battery though, which I definitely appreciate. I prefer having the batteries in there. It makes me feel like the cartridge is a little bit more of quality. Obviously, this is not an EverDrive or all those other sorts of names out there. There's many of them, so this is definitely a cheaper end, model. But either way, I prefer the battery. It makes me feel just a little bit more safe. So if anybody wants to take a closer look at that, feel free to check that out. So this physical cartridge and case are looking fantastic. I love the way this all turned out. But we're going to go ahead and pop this into the Game Boy and to see if it works. Here we are with Fool's Gold. Now let's go ahead and get the big question out of the way. Does this game save? Does it hold a save? And the answer is a resounding yes. It does hold a save, and that is of course the most important thing about this. Secondly, I would like to add, I was also able to beat the game, so that is of course a massive plus. Now, Fool's Gold itself, the lovely ROM, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about that. This isn't going to be like a full-on review or anything, I just always like to talk about what I liked about the game, or if there were any issues with it, and just in general, hopefully build hype. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Pokemon in this game have been completely overhauled, completely reworked, and as you can imagine, the sprite work is phenomenal. Dare I say, professional, like Game Freak level good. It's wild. It's no surprise here that I love the Gen 2 art style. It's my absolute favorite. I just think it looks flawless, and it's got such character behind each sprite, and it's got a lot of detail that I feel a lot of other sprite works and gens just don't necessarily capture, and that definitely shows in this game as well. So each Pokemon has been redesigned, and not just in its physical appearance, they also sport some kind of type change. It could be as simple as tacking on the fighting type, or in many cases a complete reversal of what it used to be. Take Corsola, for example, water rock, right? Well, now it's fire type. Literally freaking fire type. A complete 180 from what it used to be. A fire type Corsola. That's just awesome. And this goes for every Pokemon, including the starters, which is already a hard choice for me if I'm being honest. I love the Gen 2 starters pretty equally as is, so having these new typed versions, it was kind of a tough pick. But I gotta say, I appreciate that they managed to still have a balanced trio of types for the starters. That was really awesome. I went with the fighting type Chikorita. He had this awesome little nunchuck on his head instead of a leaf. I love that. Thought that was so cool. And real quick, I'll go ahead and show you the team I actually ended the game with. Had to make a few changes along the way, just because of the new variety in this game. It's outstanding and honestly a little overwhelming, but like in a good way. There's just so many options. I admittedly did not have the most balanced team. I didn't know what everybody's type was going to end up, so I kind of ended up being a little weak to water, so that was maybe a bit of an issue, but that's obviously on me. Either way, I loved all of the people I chose, and it was hard to figure out everybody I wanted to pick. I didn't end up getting Apom. That's on me. I did run into him, but I did not actually use him. But seriously, all of the Pokemon in here are so freaking cool. Basically everyone I ran into, I could envision on my team. I was like pointing them out, like, yeah, I want that. Yeah, I want that. So it was just wild how good they all looked. This game does advertise having all Pokemon available one way or another, be it stones, in-game trading, level up, all the good stuff. So you can definitely have a fun time building your team just with the sheer variety of Pokemon available to you. Physical and type-wise, all the Pokemon are different, and this also reflects in what Pokemon you're going to be running into in the game. You're going to be seeing a lot of Pokemon earlier than you normally would in a standard Gen 2 playthrough. Take that Corsola, for example, I mentioned earlier. It's fire type now, so you're obviously not going to be running that thing on the water, just out and about in the grass. Originally, I thought this was just going to be the regular 251 Johto Pokemon, but if you play, you'll know there's actually a lot of other Pokemon from outside of Johto. A lot of those extended evolutions or the variant forms like Berserker, Magmortar, Honchkrow, and pretty much all those other ones. So a ton of other ones available to you outside of the 251. So team building is just super fun, and it's got such replayability because of all of the changes to the Pokemon. I really cannot state enough just how awesome all of these Pokemon are. They're just so well designed. You can also expect some changes to the gym leaders as well. They do all support their original types from what I could tell, so that hasn't changed, but their teams definitely have. And it was just a ton of fun seeing what each gym leader was going to use. Obviously you still knew what type to expect, but you didn't know what they were going to throw out. So that was just always an awesome surprise seeing what Pokemon they threw out. And I'd say it definitely helped some of them out, with some upgrades to their teams, and if I'm being completely honest, it made a few of them a little bit more bearable. I'm looking at you, Whitney. No more freaking Meltank, my god. And same goes for the Elite Four members and Champion as well, even Red, just all of those, mainline people that you face in the game. They all got new remix teams, and everyone was a blast to face. So that is definitely this game's biggest feature for sure, and they all looked fantastic, but there are a few other things worth mentioning as well. This game is still Pokemon Crystal at its core, but we do have a few changes to the overworld, as well as some minor dialogue changes, but nothing that affects the story though. It's still the same Gen 2 story. And I love Gen 2 as is, but this game really brings the world to a whole new light. One of the first changes you'll come across, and coincidentally maybe my favorite change, was Cherry Grove. Normally a pretty forgettable town, right? Well, not so much in here. They kind of spruced it up for sure. Just adding cherry blossom trees and just a little touch of pink with the petals, it really brought a new life to the town, and it made a standout impression for me at least. And there's little changes like this all across the regions, both of them, adding extra color or slight texture changes to various parts of cities and towns. Even some of the routes feel a little different. Nothing outright changes a town, like nothing becomes unrecognizable, but a lot of places got a little bit of a makeover, and it just helps the regions stand out that much more. Now, there are a few new locations to the game. Nothing mandatory, all optional. I definitely recommend you check them out though, if not just for how they look, then for the extra training and battles. So, obviously the Sevi Islands that we mentioned earlier, but we also have a couple new towns in the Johto region near the northwest portion of the region. And they look great. Maybe a smidge empty. A few houses that you can't go in, no doors on the houses, so that was a little so-so, but otherwise very well designed, and same goes for the new routes as well. They all felt very fun and refreshing. We also got new biomes, which I love to see, adding like snow on the route right before Ice Cave, and even Mount Silver is a little more snowy. I like that. And I've definitely said this in other videos before, I don't usually love sandy areas or desert levels, and not just in Pokemon games, like all games. I find them a little boring. They're some of my least favorite places to trek through. However, something about Gen 2 just makes it all okay. Just seeing something that's not normally in this game, it stands out, and they make it look really good. It doesn't feel as like sluggish, I guess, as desert routes kind of feel for me. So definitely a welcome addition. And without spoiling too much fun, we do have little side quests, if that's what you want to call it, in these areas. So something kind of weird or spooky is going on with the Nurse Joys. Kind of gave me Missingno vibes, if you know what I mean. So definitely explore these new places. It'll be worth your time, and you also happen to get access to some pretty cool new Pokemon if you do. I also love it when the developers include themselves in the game, and there's a new area near Sinwood City where you can actually face off against several developers who have some rather shiny and unique Pokemon choices, so shout out to all of them again. I love those kinds of add-ins. There are, of course, some quality of life changes, most notably Infinite TMs, which is, of course, just a fantastic addition, comes in very clutch, as well as the addition of new, more modern moves with new animations. That was awesome. Also, you've got more unique overworld Pokemon sprites, like the little ones when you view your team, so not just like the same 5 or 6 shared between all the Pokemon. Not really sure if that's a quality of life change or not. The shiny rate has also been tweaked, so theoretically easier to run into some of those. Oddly enough though, no running shoes. Now, that was a little strange. I won't harp on it too much or anything, but I was definitely surprised that it wasn't in the game. Most Gen 1 and Gen 2 acts have usually implemented running shoes, but this one seemingly did not. But that's all good, you still got the bike, and I'm not used to running in Gen 2 anyways, so no harm, no foul. And if you played any of the Gen 2 games before, you probably know that they're pretty easy. Not super hard, which I like. I want to have a fun time and not just mindlessly grind for hours, especially when you compare it to Gen 1. Those games are pretty grindy. Fool's Gold, though, does turn up the dial just a tad. Nothing crazy at all, still easy enough games. The enemies might be smarter. I'm not actually sure if they got tweaked or not, but they definitely seemed more aware of type advantage and occasionally would switch their Pokemon out. But more so, you'll notice it with the gym leaders. Obviously, they typically had some sort of enhanced team. They also seemed to just have more Pokemon on their teams, just like 1 or 2 extra, so having that extra member definitely stepped things up a bit. There was the slightest level increase in the game, and thankfully it's not like some ROM hacks where you play and then randomly halfway through the game, there's just the most insane level curve and you have to grind for hours just to keep up. That's never really fun. But this game does increase the levels, but they do so in a much more natural and gradual way. Like me, you probably won't even notice it at first, but eventually you'll notice that a lot of the people you face do seem bumped up just a little bit. The last thing I'd like to mention about Fool's Gold is its unique password system. And I was a little dense at first. I thought, like, what, does this game use like that old archaic password instead of like regular saves? Obviously I was wrong, but what I do mean by passwords is that in the beginning of each playthrough, you're given the option to input a unique password that can change the way you experience your game. Admittedly, I did not do this, as I wanted a more simple, traditional playthrough, but they do exist as an option for anybody who wants to spice up their playthrough. And I found a little Reddit post that I'll pop this up here that kind of goes over what each password does. You've got things like Indigo, which will switch the starters to the Kanto ones, or Emerald for Hoenn starters, just showing you, more of the extra Pokemon in the game. You've also got things like Paradox, which inverses all of the battle types, and that just sounds chaotic to me. I mean, kudos to anybody who wants to try that. And just quite a few others. Some of these passwords do have requirements like beating the game or other things like that in order to actually use them. Just a variety of things. But I do really think that this is such a neat system implemented into the game. Something that I personally haven't seen before. And just like with the new variety of remixed Pokemon, this also helps with the replayability of the game. It just adds a ton of depth to the game, and I think really puts this game on a whole new level when compared to a lot of the other ROM hacks out there. So I had an absolute blast playing through Fool's Gold. It was easily in my top 3 ROM hacks, or at least it is now, I should say. It was just, there's nothing else quite like it, or I have not played anything quite like it. And it's also worth mentioning that I didn't experience any glitches with this cartridge. Everything seemed to check out, I was able to beat the game, it holds a save, I've put 30-something plus hours into it, so everything is checking out with the physical cartridge, and like I said, it's just a phenomenal game. So definitely shout out to Celadonk and everybody else. Please check out this game, check it out on an emulator. You guys won't be disappointed, but show some love to the creators of this game. It's phenomenal, and I'm definitely looking forward to checking out other projects that they've worked on. I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled on that. But if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like. I would greatly appreciate that. It would help out the channel and help out the video a ton. If you guys enjoyed this and want to see more content like that, feel free to subscribe for more similar content. And of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to answer those. And if there's anything else you want to see from me in the future as well, leave those down below as well. I'm always open to new ideas and exploring new content, so all of your help is greatly appreciated. And as always, until next time, I'll see you all later.